Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and we're here to preserve and promote culture in this benighted age, one weekly conversation at a time. You can find and subscribe to this podcast via Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and a whole bunch of other venues. Just visit our site, vmspod.com, to find more information, as well as our RSS feed, which you can plug into any podcatcher so you never miss an episode of the Virtual Memories Show. You can also follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube, where I go by vmspod, and subscribe to my semi-weekly newsletter at buttondown.com/vmspod. Well, I am posting this one a day late. Not that any of you guys are going to notice. Largely, I was going to do this intro Tuesday afternoon, but I was awaiting a in-home health evaluation tied to my insurance company with some third-party thing, and they managed to stand me up. So I kept figuring if I ever started with the intro, they would show up in 2 minutes and, I'd lose the whole thing. But anyway, I got stood up by the people who are supposed to evaluate my health, which is probably a metaphor of some kind or another. But otherwise, I am in one of those phases where I have to remind myself of all the wonder and beauty I get to experience, which I guess you might call depression. It's not an ongoing thing, more up and down, periodical after Dad's death and the whole tumultuousness of my life, etc. But the upshot is I do have reminders of the good stuff around me. One thing is this tote bag right by my desk. It's a tote bag I bought at the American Book Company in Amsterdam. I bought it last May when I was doing a trade show in Rotterdam, and it helps remind me of the Anselm Kiefer retrospective I went to during that weekend after the Rotterdam show. I just look at the bag, think about the couple of days there and this incredible art exhibition and everything. And well, it was only a couple of months back, but it feels like years at this point, which again is probably a symptom of, the emotional state. But I know it's going to pass, and I know well enough not to make any big decisions when this is going on. To that end, I do not have a guest lined up for next week. I am up in the air about, hey, maybe take August off, start recording some of the September guests, and, hit the fall running. But again, I am not going to make a major decision that involves Gil goes into some state of inertia. So I know you are not here to listen to me talk to myself. You are here to listen to me talk to other people. So we'll get started. This week, actually, you get me talking to two people, David Levithan and Jens Lekman, who have collaborated on a wonderful new novel. It's called Songs for Other People's Weddings. It's from Abrams Books, came out a week or two ago, and it is a gem. Just basically, the novel follows the relationship of a man and a woman who we know as J and V. J is a singer-songwriter of some renown in Sweden. After a song on one of his albums kind of takes off, he starts getting asked to play at people's weddings, and he always makes an original song for the married couple after consulting with them a little. This mirrors some of Jens's life, which we'll talk about shortly. But Jay's girlfriend, V, is supportive, but has a career that's been kind of stuck in neutral until this big and very hectic job opportunity takes her to New York, and their relationship begins to fray under the strain of that. And Jay keeps playing weddings and trying to figure out how to repair things with V, all the while coming to understand more about love and commitment through the different wedding partners he gets to meet and the weddings he participates in as the singer. But that's just the plot, which is interesting enough in its way. But, you could see sort of in a rom-com, kind of generic mode. That's not what this book is. What makes this book special is the characterization, the absolute nuttiness, but reality of some of the weddings, the sense of what it's really like to see other people on what's supposed to be the happiest day of their lives, and how we see the ways that J and V grow apart and how they each respond to change as people, and as people who love each other, but people who are facing different parts of their lives in different stages. Plus, every wedding gets us an original song in the book. But as I mentioned to David and Jens in the conversation, I didn't know what to expect going in. Like I said, I thought, from the premise, kind of a rom-com sort of thing, maybe I needed something light after a very heavy phase that I've been going through lately. But this book is so much more than that. The story between J and V feels real, but just as importantly, it's not just about the two of them. The other characters in the book have their own lives. They're not just foils for J and V, and they're not just symbols of what love could look like. They feel like lived people, making big decisions and, coming to that moment of commitment in their lives, or failing to. It's a book that brought me a lot more than I was expecting going in. And the writing is smart. The dialogue really captures what we talk about when we talk about love. And David also does a great job relating the creative process that Jay goes through for making these songs and putting them together in time for each wedding. There's a sort of wisdom that runs throughout the book, even when the characters aren't always ready to accept it. There's a sense that they belong to a world. And that was so much more than I was thinking of going into this. So, plus, like I said, there are songs. There's a QR code with the book that links to the MP3s of Jens's wedding songs, Jay's wedding songs, but the ones that Jens actually records. And they're a goddamn delight. I'm kind of cut off from contemporary everything, music and other things that normal people enjoy. We'll just say that. So I knew nothing about Jens's music before starting the book, but he is a semi-depressive pop delight. I'll put it that way. He puts these wonderful melodies together to accompany these sort of gorgeous, witty lyrics. I enjoyed discovering his music in the process of discovering this book. So Songs for Other People's Weddings is listed as by David Levithan with songs by Jens Lekman. But as you'll get from the course of the conversation, this was a very different sort of collaboration, not just a, we need a song here thing. Anyway, suffice to say, I enjoyed the living heck out of Songs for Other People's Weddings, especially in the roller coaster state I'm in right now. It is a delight of a book and album. So go check it out. And, in a sense, just talking about it like this is kind of lifting my spirits and reminding me of some of the good stuff like I was talking about earlier. Now, here's David and Jens's bios. David Levithan is the author of numerous acclaimed novels, including The Lover's Dictionary, Every Day, Boy Meets Boy, and Two Boys Kissing. His other collaborations include Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist with Rachel Cohn and Will Grayson with John Green. He can often be found with headphones on, a devoted music listener, but it's safe to say that nobody will ever ask him to sing at a wedding. Jens Lekman is a singer and songwriter from Sweden with several beloved albums such as Life Will See You Now, Night Falls Over Kortedala, and Oh, You're So Silent Jens. He was once voted the 15th sexiest man in Sweden by Elle. Then he dropped down to number 33, and since then he has not been included in their list. He works part-time as a wedding singer. And now, the Virtual Memories conversation with David Levithan and Jens Lekman. tell me how the collaboration came about. And I know, David, from your experience, you've collaborated on novels before, but tell me how this collaboration came together and how it worked.
Well, if it starts with me, it starts with an email from Jens. Jens and I had met about 20 years ago after I basically sent a fan email because I was listening to a lot of his music as I was writing one of my novels, and decided to just send him a note saying, "Hey, I just want you to know that your music is inspiring me," and sent him some of my books, and we stayed in touch afterwards, more as a mutual admiration society and seeing each other every now and then than anything else. So out of the blue, he sent me an email and said, "Hey, I have this idea. I think it might be a book. What do you think?" In which case, we now rewind, and Jens can talk about where that came from.
Jens? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, it's so hard every time I talk about this to know where to start. It's like, yeah, should I start maybe with why I started singing at weddings? Maybe that's a good point to start.
That's a good point, I think. Yeah.
So on that record that David was listening to when he sent me that email 20 years ago, there was a song called "If You Ever Need a Stranger to Sing at Your Wedding." And that song was not meant to be taken seriously, but people did for some reason. And they started asking me if I wanted to sing at their weddings, and I thought that was really sweet. And I like, putting myself in awkward situations. So I said, sure, I can do that. And then over time, it just became something that I love doing, and also a way to support my songwriting career, because weddings, for some reason, pay better than Spotify does. So yeah, and then at some point I started thinking that it'd be fun to write something about this, because there's so many anecdotes that I have from the wedding shows that I've done. And I thought, who would be the perfect person to write this with? And then I realized that I knew David a little bit, and it'd be a nice thing to do with him.
And how many of your experiences made it into the book, and how much is Jens as a stand-in, or how fictional is the lead character? And both of you can tackle that one too, I guess.
I was feeding David with anecdotes during this time, and sometimes David would ask, like, I'm going to write about this type of wedding now, and you got any anecdotes from this type of wedding? And I mean, I don't feel like there's anything that I feel very I want to respect the couples that I played for. I don't want to leave them out. But so most of the anecdotes are absurd things that have happened that are more general, like passing out in a cake, which happened once, or
I'll say inside a hollowed cake as opposed to passing out and falling into a cake.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll get to that later. But yeah, so there's a few things, and a few like more emotional anecdotes as well, but that we've reworked a little bit.
Yeah, David, can you talk about that in terms of that process for you, like what that sort of collaboration was like?
Well, it was fascinating because I felt that I was writing somebody else's autofiction, which was a really interesting approach to take. And it was interesting because while Jens and I, again, were acquaintances and had talked music and books over the years, I didn't really know anything about his personal life. I didn't know about any of his relationships or exes. I didn't know any, again, of those personal details. So it helped me make Jay a separate character. I knew that I was not basing it on who Jens was and what Jens had been through emotionally or in terms of romantic relationships, because I genuinely didn't know. And that was a nice balance, that that Jay became a character who obviously bears a resemblance to Jens, and again has been through some strange things that Jens has been through, like being asked to be inside of a wedding cake and passing out in it. But at the same time, Jay and V, Jay's girlfriend of 2 years, who form the central relationship of the book, are pretty much entirely fictional. And one of the things that shaped Jay and V's relationship was Jens and I would talk about relationships and talk about what works and what doesn't, and what are some of the things that are completely out of bounds, and what are some of the things that you put up with when you're with somebody else. But again, we learned that about each other while we were writing. I didn't know any of it beforehand.
Yeah, I'm worried that Jens, you're going to go through a Knausgaard phase where everybody just starts associating you with the lead for the book. But, you know, it could lead to fame and fortune in that weird literary circle. So, or you get to move to England and try and go into hiding or something. But if you guys could
England is not a good place for hiding.
No, that's true. You know, it's
I know better places.
Good. Okay. But I'm interested, David, in what you just said about the getting to know each other and talking through relationships and love, like the idea that the two of you may have made, we'll say, discoveries or new realizations about the nature of relationships and love and marriage over the course of the writing. What surprised either of you, I guess, in terms of what the final book became along those lines?
I think for me, it was navigating the relationship for Jay and V. And the setup is that they're two people who do get along, who enjoy each other's company, have a good history, and then an opportunity comes along for V that may separate them. And the question becomes, how do you navigate that? And that to me was interesting. The notion of, it's not about a bad relationship. It's not about a toxic relationship. It's not about two people who find that they are wrong for each other. It's more about what happens when you're right for each other, but there are other things going on. And that was really interesting to discuss about sort of how you find that balance, how you navigate that, and some of the sacrifices you have to make and some of the hard things you go through. And again, I think the first draft was instinctive, but then the second draft was us sort of looking at every interaction, looking at every scene, and trying to see if the relationship did make sense to both of us. Because sometimes a lot of V's side of the story was in my head, and Jens was saying, well, why is she doing this? And that's when I knew I had to put it more on the page. So that was just interesting. And I think also we are separate people, and we have different approaches to relationships. And that's always interesting to me when I'm collaborating with somebody else, to just sort of see that something that I might write, which seems like, a perfectly okay thing to say to another person, Jens might say, actually, if anyone ever said that to me, I would be out the door in 2 seconds flat. And I'd be like, okay, let's revise this, because that is valid. I must put up with much more than you do.
Yeah, Jens, what's your take?
Yeah, it was fascinating to see how different some of our views were on love and relationships, and I think that was a lesson from this, that love is something very specifically different for everyone. But for me, it was also in a way a meditation on what it means to be alone. I mean, so many of these stories are about what it means to be together, but Jay, the wedding singer, is also very much an observer in this story. He's very much standing outside of these weddings and relationships, and even in his relationship to V, there is a distance. And I think that's something that I was thinking about a lot myself around this time, what it means to be alone, mm-hmm. and the fact that you may not actually end up with someone in the end. And that could also be fine.
It's something that struck me about the book, and I pray to God you guys don't take it the wrong way by any means. When it was put in front of me, I didn't know what to expect. Like I just the description, cover, etc. I'm thinking it'll be this kind of frivolous rom-com sort of thing, and I was just floored once I started the emotional honesty of the characters, and not just J and V, but every supporting character has feels like they have a life, and exactly what you're talking about, that sense of relationship, who they are when they're with other people and who they are when they're alone. It's, well, less of a question and more of a compliment, but I'm really impressed what both of you brought to this in terms of that perspective and that ability to kind of bring people to life like this in who they really are on the page and who they are in terms of how they talk to others. So thank you for all that.
Thank you.
I do want to ask what the interplay was like for you guys in terms of making the book. Where were the songs? Where was the writing? What was the process, I guess, in terms of that side of it, in terms of actually, getting the writing together?
Well, for me, something that really excited me about the collaboration, the reason you collaborate is it brings out new things in your own writing, but also sort of structurally gives you a chance to do something different. And obviously, this combining songs and story was something I would never have been able to do on my own, to say the least. So the way we structured it was that every chapter was going to be a wedding. And we knew that every wedding would have an original song written for that couple. And sometimes Jens would send me a song, and then I would have to figure out what the wedding was and what the couple was that would lead to that song. And then about halfway through, we turned the tables, and I would write the chapter and introduce the characters and write the wedding, and then basically say, insert song here, and Jens would have to write the song. And I think it was crucial that we did it chapter by chapter. So it's not that I wrote the story and then Jens plugged in the song. It was that every wedding we would stop, we would have a chapter, we would have a song, we would get to talk about both of those, and then we would progress, so that we built both parts of the structure at the same time rather than building one and then filling in the other. And that really, I think, made us very much on the same page in terms of the story, in terms of the tone, because the music and the storytelling really did dovetail perfectly into where Jay's head was at in terms of love and relationships. So that, again, was not something we knew was going to work from the get-go. Every collaboration is a risk, and you never know whether the pieces are going to fit together. But to me, it was pretty remarkable how well the pieces fit together. And also the more we worked, the better the pieces fit. I think there was a significant moment when we turned the tables and suddenly Jens was writing the songs for the chapters after the chapter was written rather than before.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, you really had that understanding of what the book was and who the characters were. I guess that's more for Jens than you, David.
It was just very different because in the beginning, I wrote songs for completely imaginary couples, where basically I just sat down to write a love song with nothing. No like blueprint, no inspiration, no people in front of me. Like I when I sing at weddings, I often do write wedding songs for the couples. But then I sit down for an hour with them and I interview them and I try to understand what their relationship is about, what their struggles have been. And that helps me to connect with them emotionally and to find something to put into the song, what the song will be about. And so the first couple of songs, they were hard. I did look for inspiration in my own life. A lot of the first songs in the book were inspired by things that have happened in my own life at the time. But something really happened, something really clicked when we turned it around, and David sent me the chapters with the characters, and I got to know them a little bit, and I got to write for them specifically. Then it became much more organically, like it usually is when I write wedding songs for couples.
Yeah, I'm kind of fascinated by that. The challenge of writing stories about people you've never met. This will sound weird. It puts me in mind of a conversation I recorded with Simon Critchley, the philosopher, about Nick Cave going in the opposite direction. How Cave always did, stories of misfits and other weird people, and eventually found the personal voice for himself in the process. I'm really interested in songwriting as narrative, I guess, how it changes and transforms for you. I'll put it this way. Did this process change the way you look at writing songs? Or has it led you down other paths than you were used to?
I mean, it did. I mean, I guess right now we're talking about the book and the book songs. Mm-hmm. But there's also the album that I'm releasing in September, which is based on the book, and is sort of like the narrative concept album version of the book. Mm-hmm. And when I started writing that one, it became like the storytelling started taking a new part in it. The song that I put out this week, for example, is 10 minutes and 30 seconds long. I've never written a song that long ever. So yeah, I think it's definitely affected the songwriting in many ways. Yeah.
And David, in terms of how you approach writing, is this collaboration given you a different direction moving forward?
Well, I mean, what's funny, my frequent collaborator, Rachel Cohn, always used to joke that I would put song lyrics in my chapters of our novels because I was a frustrated songwriter. And the only way I would get a song done would be to put it in a novel and hope that somebody set it to music. So this is definitely the natural extension from that. No, I think what's interesting, and it's been interesting, Jens and I have had some great conversations about this, is it really made me think about my relationship to music in a way that I would never have had to in such a creative way. And the question of what role does music play in our lives, and what does it bring to the table that storytelling can't, and how your reaction to a song is very different than your reaction to reading a novel. And often I would say in interviews early in my career, like with my first novel, Boy Meets Boy, I would say that people would ask, oh, well, who are your inspirations? Who are your role models in terms of writing the story? And I would say it's actually pop music. I would love my novel to have the force of like New Order's Bizarre Love Triangle and the ups and downs you feel while listening to that you can have this happy feeling, yet at the same time, like have all of this anxiety manifest in the lyrics. Like that was the balance that I wanted to strike with my novels. So again, I think this has taught me, again, the role that music can play in storytelling. And it was really fascinating and has been fascinating on tour. I've been reading, and then we've been singing the songs from the chapters that I read from. And just seeing the audience reactions, I like to think that I am a very moving reader of prose, but it isn't until the songs hit that the tears come, and we see people really moved, and that is so interesting to watch and to see how the song can hit you emotionally in a way that a story can only set the grounds for.
I will also say that I think when I started this project and when I reached out to David, I had kind of fallen out of love with music a little bit, and I wanted to branch out into something else. And but during this project, it helped me fall back in love with music. And I do think music is in many ways the main character of this book. The way that David described the songwriting process and the way that music takes on new meaning at these weddings, it's something that I hadn't really formulated to myself. So I think that has also affected my songwriting and also given me new love and inspiration into my songwriting.
Can I ask what made you fall out of love with it? The book talks about the economics of being a musician. I don't know if that's a factor, but can you speak a little about falling out of love with music?
Yeah, it's all Spotify's fault.
Okay, just making sure. I'm glad it wasn't.
No, it's. Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, it is the way that music was turned into content, into a form of a scented candle,
right?
And the way that it felt like it was. Because it's forced to be on these platforms, it just kind of lost its strength, its independence, and that was what drew me to music initially. And I think this is also the reason why I've been playing at weddings, because there it's not a scented candle. Usually, it's something that these couples have chosen specifically for their big day, and yeah. So it is Spotify's fault.
Okay, I just opened up Bandcamp, so I will buy a bunch of your records after this at real prices. So
thank you,
because I'm not a streaming guy. I have it used to be iTunes. Now I guess it's Apple Music, whatever we call the library. But it's a hard drive with just tons and tons of music that I've picked up from my CDs and other people's CDs over the years. So in theory, everything I have was paid for by somebody at some point. So, so I do try to at least, curate my own playlist, as it were, but never been a streaming guy. So, so I've not contributed to your departure from music, but I'm glad you
thank you for that.
You found new faith in it, though. So, I will ask about the tour, but there's one thing, David, I was wondering from your end, were there songs that when he sent them to you, you just plotzed like, oh my God, this is fantastic, and I have no idea how I'm going to write a chapter around this? Did you have those sorts of holy crap moments?
I mean, the whole thing was a holy crap moment. I mean, again, it is. I mean, imagine you're collaborating with this singer-songwriter who you've long admired, and he's just sending you new songs that you are among the first person to hear, and that you're hearing them at all stages of creation. It was astonishing. I mean, and surreal, and still is a little surreal. But it was, I mean, I loved the challenge of it. I mean, again, people have asked us on the tour, like, oh, well, were there any songs that you thought, no way, I can't use this? And the answer is no. We both knew what the project was, and we both knew, again, which chords to strike, whether metaphorical or literal. And so when I would get a song, like the song in the second chapter, Still in Love with You, at first I didn't know what to do with it. I mean, the line that sort of we make a lot of in the chapter, or I make a lot of in the chapter, is it's about a love as a crime scene I keep returning to. And it's like, oh, okay, that's quite intense. But again, I love a challenge. And so it was, okay, well, who is the couple that would be, the love would be a crime scene they keep returning to?
That was the hook for me, by the way. That chapter was the one where I thought, oh, there's a lot more going on in this book than I really thought there was. Yeah. So you got me with that one. Excellent.
And I think, and that was me also trying to signal to Jens, like, I got it. That there is going to be more on the surface. These aren't just going to be flyaway weddings or lighthearted weddings. Like there are some serious human issues going on at these weddings, sometimes underneath, sometimes right on the surface. So that was really amazing to me. I will note that he never sent me a 10-minute song. If he had sent me a 10-minute song, then maybe then I would have been like, what do I do with this? This is longer than the chapter itself. Yeah. but no, it was always a creative springboard to get a song. And likewise, again, when the tables were turned, it was really fascinating to write a chapter and try to craft these characters and then see if he could distill who I had created into a song. And he did.
By the way, you mentioned, second draft for the novel. Were the songs reworked after those initial conceptions?
Yeah, a little bit. Just to fit in. I mean, we did a little bit of fine-tuning.
Fine-tuning,
I think.
yeah. That's what I figured. I mean, a major overhaul, but I assume there's some editorial process there too. But, yeah.
I mean, there was also fine-tuning in the sense of arrangements, and there were songs that I wrote as, I sent full band arrangements to David. And the songs were like the song "Working on a Script," for example, in chapter 3.
Yeah.
I kind of imagined that first as like an upbeat song, and then I realized what a tender moment it was supposed to be to fit into that scene. So that's when I rearranged it with just piano and a little bit of strings. So a lot of musical fine tuning.
You happy with the album that has come from it?
You mean the book songs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you feel them as a collection together, they really fit for you.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I made this other narrative concept album was because I felt like they wouldn't make sense on their own. The book songs that Jay sings in the book. But I think I recorded them very quickly just a few months ago. Just went into a studio and just recorded all of them. And I think they have this sound, this feeling, all of them, like they are almost played in a room at a wedding. Yeah.
So tell me about book tour versus, in Jens's case, a musical tour. A, how's the book tour going? B, how do you contrast it with other tour experiences?
It's very different. And it's kind of inspiring because I like, for example, I like the Q&A.
Yeah.
I like that conversation that we're having at the end. You never have that at a normal show. I mean, you mentioned Nick Cave before. He did a similar thing.
I was just thinking that. He had that Q&A tour that he did. Yeah. Yeah.
But I've never seen any other artists do a Q&A at the end of a show. Maybe that's something I'm going to incorporate into my own shows someday.
And David, your experience with the tour so far?
Oh, I mean, it is infinitely more interesting to have somebody singing and playing a guitar alongside you when you're doing a reading than to just do a reading alone. And as I said, it has been really incredible to see the emotions it can evoke in the audience. It truly, every single one, whether we've been in the center of a Barnes & Noble where other people were shopping around us, or at the Strand in a room that was dimly lit and very atmospheric, truly everybody is transported, and the attention being paid is astonishing. And again, I think that's the alchemy of the story and the music coming together.
When you look at the people in the audience, is there that's a David fan versus that's a Jens fan? Or, is it sort of an overlap as that stuff goes?
I mean, the Venn diagram has a lot of overlap. We've discovered. I mean, it's sort of like we've had a very high number of middle school librarians who are the coolest people in the world, but that is sort of at the center of both of our demographic.
Yeah.
So yes, I think it has been a mix of both, but we've also gone to some cities on the book tour that Jens will be back in November and December on the music tour. And it's very fun because pretty much I'd say 85 to 90% of those audiences says, "Oh, I'll see you in November. Oh, I'll see you when you're back in November." I mean, clearly they want the musical experience as well.
Gotcha. And weirdest questions, since you mentioned the Q&A portion of this stuff, weirdest questions you guys have received?
Can't think of any really. Do you know any, David?
I mean, we had a tangent from a audience member. One of those. It's not really a question. It's more of a statement. I was going to say more
of a comment than a question.
Yes, and the statement was basically that our next book should be about funerals. And okay, it was sort of interesting. Tonally, sort of a different book, but we heard a lot of anecdotes about funerals in the lead up to the question that wasn't a question.
It's a good point. I mean, I've been thinking about how my career should progress, and I kind of peaked around my fans are around the same age as me. So I kind of peaked around, when I was in my mid-30s when people were getting married. And now it's like the second round where people are getting divorced and remarried. And but I got to think about the future at some point. The weddings are probably not going to happen anymore.
Right. I'll say you're about 10 years younger than me and David. So yeah, we're firmly in that next wave demographic. I'm 54. So we're in that next wave demographic of the, it's all downhill from here. So that said, going into this, I was not afraid, but, had the image of the wedding singer, that Adam Sandler thing in my head, but also had music and lyrics, that Hugh Grant, Drew Barrymore thing going on, and thinking, no, luckily this took a completely different route and went in a much more interesting direction. And of course, the 4 Weddings and a Funeral thing is right. Always in the background, but I'm glad you forged a path I was totally not expecting for this book. So, Jens, so the question I was wondering, as a musician, collaboration is, unless you're a totally solo singer-songwriter, collaboration is part of the mode. Was it markedly different in that respect, working in this sort of collaboration, or has your background, sort of prepared you for, I'm going to see what David produces and we're going to work from there?
It was a very new experience. I have been that very solo musician, working in solitude. A lot of my work is very, very lonely. Mm-hmm. And as an indie musician, I'm used to just doing everything myself and deciding over everything myself. And the only collaboration I've done before really has been an album called Correspondence that I did with my friend Annika Norlin, a songwriter from Sweden, where we wrote musical letters to each other every month. So yeah, this was a very new experience for me. And I think also as a storyteller, there was, a little bit of an urge within me to want to interfere sometimes with what David was writing. I was like, no, I got this. I know how this should be going. And so I had to remind myself, I am the songwriter here, and David is the guy who's writing the story. I mean, apart from what David mentioned before about our discussions about love and relationships, I wanted David to be the guy who wrote the story, and I would write the songs.
Had you wanted to write prose previously, or have you pretty much been in the songs are my thing? I know what I'm doing here.
I've sometimes started writing short stories, and I've always got to the point where I come to a point where I think, no, this is a string section, or this is a guitar solo. For me as a songwriter, the music is the other half of the storytelling. Yeah. A lot of times I will contrast a sad story with an upbeat melody to create a tension between them. And so for me, it's just very unnatural almost to just write words. I don't have that in me really. The music is such a big part of it.
And David, as he has said, is a frustrated / failed songwriter. So, again, as the...
I mean, I don't know that I said failed.
I'm extrapolating. Frustrated. But I would say, like your symposium comments from the first wedding, that sense of finding your complementary persona is,
yes.
Has to feel good in this context. One of the things I find interesting, sort of a subtext or a theme that runs throughout the book, is the online / performing personae we have versus, having private selves. I was happy you managed to get that across without it seeming preachy or pedantic in any way, shape, or form, talking about the ways we act, through these online selves and the influencer culture, et cetera. But I was wondering, for each of you, having these public faces, and especially for Jens having a performing face, how do you manage the private self and the need to do this whole branding and be a public face in some way? Besides going on podcasts on a Saturday morning with some guy from New Jersey, of course.
Well, one thing that I've become more and more against is this whole spilling the beans, autobiographical storytelling. That's one of the reasons why I didn't want to write this myself. I wanted to make it a story together with someone else. I think that my own songwriting is what I would call emotionally autobiographical, in the sense that I do write about things that I have experienced, but I put them into stories. I change, the stuff that's happened. And in many ways, I find this story to be very true to me and David, and what we have experienced in our lives through the discussions that we've had about love and relationships. But it is a whole completely made up story, and it protects the people around us in that sense, and the couples that I've played for. I'm not sure if that's what you were asking about.
Partly, I was also thinking about I now follow you on Instagram, the sense in which we're public in that respect, the way we're branding and the way we also try to have lives of our own, knowing that, especially in your job, but also in David's world, you have to do this publicizing and making a public persona, instead of simply, being who we are and having a marketing company or the publisher, do the work. But tell me about your online selves and your private selves, I guess.
I think that ever since the beginning, I've been compartmentalizing myself, and thought of myself as these two people, this character, Jens Lekman, who is now also Jay in a way, and the real me. And one of them is the guy who plays the lead role in my stories. And he's kind of based on the real me.
And David, your public versus private projection?
Well, I'm lucky because I established myself early enough in the MySpace years that I could then walk away from it, which I did. I'm not on social media. I am a firm believer in let the book speak for the book. Don't be the author, to the point that I don't even want author photos on my books, because I don't like it when I go to the back of a book and look at the author and somehow transpose what the author looks like onto the main character. I just want the story to exist separate from me. And again, I'm lucky that I get to do that, because I have no doubt that if this were my debut novel, I would be all over Instagram, TikTok, whatever it would take to get people's eyes on it. So I understand I have the luxury of being older right now, but I do think it's separate. And I do think that is something that the book, hopefully subtly, is about, is the nature of humanity when it comes to the connections we have with other people, that that there is no substitute for actually being in the same place at the same time. And I think one thing we haven't talked about, I mean, in terms of the timing of this project, is that we started writing it in April 2021. So it's also very much a pandemic novel insofar as we started writing it when there was this huge absence of that human in-person connection. And especially for Jens and being a musician, I mean, the utter standstill of having those face-to-face interactions with people listening to your music. And so I think for J&V, what they are really grappling with is whether you can have a relationship if you are not in the same place at the same time. But I think even more than that, the wedding couples who ask Jay to play at their wedding and many other people within the story, what they're craving the most is that same place, same time feeling. And that is something that when music is live and a song is sung to you in person, that does give you an experience that you can't have on Zoom. You can't have on Netflix or on Spotify. It just, because that humanity is there, it's this way the singer's voice catches. It is, there's nothing better at a concert, sorry Jens, than when a singer forgets a line. Like suddenly the whole crowd is cheering. You would think it would be the opposite. You'd think they'd be disappointed, but no, it's that the singer is giving you this individual wobble, this moment of humanity, and you rally around that. Like that's what technology threatens to take away from us. And I think we feel both in terms of interpersonal relationships and as a society at whole, we will be much, much worse off if we manage to divorce ourselves from that in-person moment.
Once again, bringing back Nick Cave, who apparently is the shadow over my entire conversation with everybody, it puts me in mind during, I guess in 2020, he was about to have a tour. Everything had to get shut down. He did a solo concert at Alexandra Palace, but just by himself. You know, there was still social distancing. They just set up the mics, piano, etc., and I think played it live, and they ended up making an album. But it was that sense of the performer still wants to perform. You know, the audience can't be there, and you know, what is the next best thing, I guess.
It's interesting what you said there, David. I hadn't actually thought of that. The pandemic was, I don't know if you remember how all artists and bands did like streaming concerts during that time.
Living room shows, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of those streaming concerts, I mean, it was fun that all of a sudden we had this technology so bands could do this. But also they to me at least, they felt so empty because the audience was just a comment section on the side. It was just you could press a button and a little heart appeared. And I watched some of those and I was just devastated by what music was being turned into at that point. So I started experimenting with a lot of, I mean, for the weddings, for example, I would do one-to-one Zoom concerts where I played a song and they just had their laptop in the church. And I also started doing these concert series where I played for one person at a time. That felt much more human and real than playing for an empty cyberspace, which is the comment section.
Yeah. Honestly, before the pandemic, I only did these in person. I did not want to do what we're doing right now, doing these remotes, and I had to accommodate that. And yeah, it creates more opportunities being able to record with someone when they're not in the New York, New Jersey area. But, you know, as much as I'm enjoying this, I think, you know, seeing the two of you sitting at a table and reading each other's language, you know, understanding, you know, picking up on each other in different ways. It does mean something that, you know, it's a line from Frank O'Hara that I've been using ever since I stole it from a past guest. The only truth comes face to face. That
Oh, wow.
emotional honesty. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? The rest of the lines get kind of weird, but that particular one I stick with. But yeah, the book and the plot line we're not even talking about in the book, the secret project of a social media platform of a sort, that kind of moves the plot along here. Certainly, you show the collapse of that stuff, I guess, the moment where the, being face to face really matters to people. So, yeah, that's me with the more of a comment than a question part again, but yeah. But I guess in those lines, you mentioned knowing each other for 20 years, again, not being close, but, having a relationship of sorts. How did that change through the process of making this book? How did you get to know each other differently?
I think we got to know each other as people and instead of as a singer and an author. I mean, I think that our relationship before was very much as a singer and an author. I mean, and again, a mutual admiration society, but it was more about the work. And then again, through the discussions of this book and obviously being together on tour and being face to face, we certainly are knowing each other much more as people and as friends.
And you'll stick by that too, Jens, right? Oh, yeah, we're much better friends now.
Think about it. No, that's true.
He's like, get me out of here. Get me out of here.
Oh, my God, I got to spend another hour with this guy. Yeah. I should ask, Bowie, Jens, you mentioned the upcoming album this fall. Either of you have next projects that you're considering, contemplating, and able to talk about, or does that jinx either of what you're working on?
I just have, I always work on 2 albums at the same time. So during the recording of this album and the book songs, I've had another record called Ö. I've just come up with the title. Ö is the last letter of the Swedish alphabet. It's just the O with the 2 dots. Mm-hmm. And it's also the shortest word in Swedish. It means island. And that's just the title I've come up with. I just throw all the songs that didn't fit into this project onto that album. So I have no idea what it's going to be. But yeah, that's as far as I've come so far.
Yep. That's more than most guests tell me about what they got going next. David, any dream books or stuff you can or can't talk about?
Well, yes. I mean, it's interesting because usually I don't do 2 collaborations at the same time. But in this case, for the past 4 years, I've been working on 2 books, and one was with Jens and one was with my friend Gabriel Duckles. And it could not be more different than the book that we're discussing. But it is a book called The Fight of Our Lives, and it is a history of AIDS in America, written for teen readers, for 20-somethings, 30-somethings, basically written for anybody who is not alive at the time. And it is easily the hardest book I have ever worked on. It is the most meaningful book I've ever worked on, but it is comprised of interviews with people, essays about the quilt, Ryan White, all of the things that we know about, and then a lot of the things we don't necessarily know about from the culture at the time. And then at sort of the backbone of it is my uncle lived with AIDS for over 30 years. And so it is his story as well, and excerpts from his journals and his writings. So it is definitely a labor of love. Again, very different from the book that we are discussing, but I'm really proud of it, and it comes out in April.
I hope I can get you back on to talk about that too, because that's I grew up in northern New Jersey. I'm born the same year as you or thereabouts. And as a straight kid, nonetheless, seeing the shadow of this, throughout my teen years and then beyond, and now interviewing people like Edmund White and others, guys who survived this whole era. there's a lot of stories. So yeah, I'm going to Shanghai you back into another episode next year. So, put that on your calendar if you don't mind. So, the last question I want to ask both of you, and I apologize for not preparing you when I emailed you yesterday with the link for all this. What have you been reading, and did you take any books with you for the tour in particular?
I just came off of a reading holiday, so I've been reading so much. My favorite of the year so far is a graphic novel called Gaysians, Gaysians, by Mike Corrado, who did the young adult graphic novel Flamer. And it is about moving to a city as a young queer adult and who did not have a queer community where you come from, and basically finding your queer family. And it's just so incredibly well done. So that's every tour. There's like the book that I've just read that I want everybody to read.
Yeah, and that's basically what I'm asking. Yeah. Good. Cool. And Jens, take any books with you for this one?
I've been slowly making my way through the Alexandria Quartet by Lawrence Durrell.
Yeah, I read that back in college. Grad school. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was talking to a friend about whether love can exist in our time, and she said, you have to read this. And so I haven't really answered that question yet, and she refused to say anything more about it until I had read it. It's a long book. But I'm really fascinated by it so far.
I'll say
it's a very
the prose is just very lyrical and beautiful. I hope you're digging. B, the Bergson-esque conception of the space-time continuum that's at play there means that love in our time might be too restrictive. Love in all of our times might be a way of framing it. But yeah, nobody has brought that book up in a while for me. That's great. So.
Oh, cool.
Awesome. I actually have the slip-cased copies. I remember buying it in the 90s when I was in grad school. I was a big Henry Miller Tropic of Cancer reader, and Durrell was a friend of Miller's, and that, how these things evolve. We keep getting nudged along these little webs of reading association and such. But guys, we're coming up on an hour. I want to thank you so much, A, for coming on, B, for this book and the music that comes with it, because like I said at the beginning, this was, I went in having no idea what to expect, and you made something very memorable for me. So you also changed the way I think about ABBA and the song Dancing Queen. So, but I appreciate and want to thank you guys for coming on. And again, Jens, I will buy a bunch of your music on Bandcamp. And David, you and I have a date next April. So
sounds great. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Thank you.
And that was David Levithan and Jens Lekman. Go Get Songs for Other People's Weddings, out now from Abrams. It's an awfully good book. I enjoyed the heck out of it, and I hope I got across some of the real depth this novel has, as well as the fun of it all. It's, it can be light when it needs to be light, and it brings us close to life when it has to. The collaboration these two had is really something to behold. Along the same lines, Jens's album Songs for Other People's Weddings will be out next month. That's September 2025 for you time travelers. And that's got songs about the novel, not the wedding songs from the novel, but sort of telling the story of the novel itself. The actual songs for the novel, they're accessible through that QR code in the book that I mentioned, and they are just goddamn lovely. You should visit Jens's site to check out more about his music, his newsletter, tours, and all sorts of other stuff. And that is jenslekman.com, JENSLEKMAN.com. David's got a site, but it doesn't look like that's been updated since 2018. And as he mentioned, he's not on social media either. Jens is, though. He's on Instagram as Jens Lekman, spelled the same way, all one word. On Facebook as Jens Lekman Official, and on jenslekman.bandcamp.com, where I did, in fact, buy some of his albums after we finished up. Thanks for listening to the Virtual Memories Show. You can support this podcast by telling other people about it. There's no better way to build an audience than through word of mouth. Also, visit Apple's podcast page for us and leave a rating and review. Every little bit helps, you know? You can also support the show by telling me what you like and don't like about it and who you'd like to hear me record with or what movie or TV show or book or piece of music or comic or theater or art exhibition or whatever you think I should turn listeners on to. And you can do that by sending me a postcard, letter, email, DM if we're connected on Instagram or Blue Sky, or by leaving a message on my Google Voice number, which is 973-869-9659. Messages can be up to 3 minutes long. It'll cut you off after that, so call back and leave another message if you do. And let me know if it'd be okay to include your message in an upcoming episode of the show. You might have something interesting to share with our listeners, but I'd never run someone's message without their permission, so let me know. Now, if you've got money to spare, I appreciate it, but don't give it to me. I've got a day job that pays the bills. You should give to individuals and institutions in need. You can find people through GoFundMe, Patreon, Kickstarter, Crowdfunder, Indiegogo, all those crowdfunding platforms, where you'll find people who really need help just trying to make ends meet or get an artistic project going, covering medical bills or car payments or veterinary bills, and just a few dollars from you might make a real difference in their lives. Now, when it comes to institutions, I give to my local food bank and World Central Kitchen every month, but there are a lot of other things you can give to the Poor People's Campaign, Freedom Funds, Election Funds, Planned Parenthood, and Women's Choice. There's a lot of things you can do with your money to try to help build a better world, so I hope you'll give. Now, our music for this episode is Fella by Hal Mayforth, used with permission from the artist. You can visit my archives at vmspod.com to check out my 2018 conversation with Hal, where you can learn more about his art, his music, and more. And you can follow Hal on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/Mayforth. That's MAY4TH. And that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back next week with another great conversation. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show and download all our past episodes at Apple Podcasts and other podcast sources. And you can find all my episodes and sign up for the Virtual Memories Show newsletter at vmspod.com. And I'm also on Blue Sky and Instagram and YouTube as vmspod. You've been listening to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth. Keep reading, keep making art, and keep the conversation going.